Aloha kala, everyone. Love in unity and light. This is Ashli from goldengoddesses.org, and welcome to tonight's episode of Threshold to Ascension Radio. My guest tonight, Linda Løwebeck, was born and raised in Copenhagen, Denmark, with her psychic abilities awakened. As a child, she loved astronomy and dinosaurs, and at the age of 6, she saw her first star being. Around that same time, Linda began having telepathic communication with her guides who presented themselves to her in human form. As Linda became aware that she needed assistance and tools to understand and best utilize her innate psychic abilities, she enrolled in a 3-year psychic medium training program in her hometown of Copenhagen. She also underwent extensive healing to clear her own energy and old emotional patterns in order to be a clearer channel. This combination led to a further awakening and grounding of her gifts. In navigating 3D, Linda received a bachelor's degree in nutrition and a master's degree in IT and organization. However, she follows her sole passion on a daily basis as the founder and owner of her own psychic consultation. Amongst many things, Linda is a professional psychic medium, a trained healer, and trained Shaktipat transmissioner, and we'll talk more about her gifts and healing practice in the interview. In 2013, the guides that originally presented themselves to Linda in human form were slowly replaced with star being guides as that aspect of her consciousness expanded. In 2015, Linda saw her first physical UFO in the sky, which led to exploration that resulted in her founding CE-5 Copenhagen in 2018. Is a UFO contact organization based on the works of Dr. Stephen Greer, his Serious Disclosure Project, and the ET UFO contact protocol he developed. Linda's passion revolves around the consciousness-raising aspect of contact with our star brothers and sisters and supporting others in remembering who they truly are. So, Linda, without further ado, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And what an honor to be here. I have a lot to tell.
I bet you do. You have such a fascinating story. And one of the things that I'm really delighted to share with the Threshold to Ascension tribe is the understanding. Here in the United States, sometimes we're a little bit micro-focused on what's happening in the United States. And so the ability to bring in individuals from around the world to share the kind of contact and the awareness of what's happening. So before we get into your personal journey, would you mind sharing a little bit about the contact awareness in Denmark as you see it now, or in Europe, however you'd like to refer to it?
I think currently here in Denmark, in Copenhagen, I see there is this sort of small mental opening, especially the younger generations. They have also the last couple of years been sort of a lot of UFO documentaries on TV, and many people think that it would be illogical if there was not any life on any other planets. But I think most people think it's like microbes and maybe plants or something like that. They're still quite far from extraterrestrials and spaceships. Yeah.
And how prevalent are you? I mean, do you do this more open or more under the radar? Is it more word of mouth, or is it comfortable to kind of put it out there?
It has been a process because Danes tend to be quite skeptical about, most things. So most things you can't really measure. Very outspoken about it, especially since I established CE-5 Copenhagen, the UFO contact group here. I did that back in spring 2018. It's also a way to sort of bring it down from being this sort of unique or something special or for special good people or something like that. I want to bring psychic abilities down to a ground level. Say, well, hey, it's just expanded senses. It's ESP perception, and everybody has the seed to develop it. And just with some people, it's just naturally inborn, sort of quite developed. I don't give a shit if people think I'm crazy, because they have not seen what I've seen. And when Exactly, right? And when people come with me and do skywatch and do CE-5 contact as of Stephen Greer's contact protocol,
right.
Yeah, and they have these magnificent out-of-this-world experiences, they are transformed people. There is part of that, should we say, realization process that I'm currently elaborating, and that is what to do with yourself after contact.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you go out and you see light ships, you sense the ETs, they show themselves for your inner vision, and you just feel like you're high flying, you feel completely ecstatic. And then eventually the night ends, everybody goes their separate ways, and then you sort of get back home, maybe pop by the kiosk, and then you're sort of in your natural 3D environment, and you're sort of looking at the person behind the counter and just want to shout, I just saw you.
Absolutely. And the importance of taking it for me from just what I used to call UFO sightseeing into really that inner connection. And what does that connection mean for consciousness? I think one of the beauties, because you incorporate into your CE-5 contact groups your innate psychic and intuitive abilities. How do you bring that into your group gatherings, or for the individuals that are with you that either see a craft in the sky or see it, as you say, in your inner sight, or feel the energy, because everyone perceives differently? What have you seen the people that have been with you? How have you supported them, or how have they continued to incorporate that in their journey?
I have definitely kept in contact with them and always telling them that I am available if they have any question or have any after effect or after experience. People tend to sort of get curious by themselves and start searching different places on the web. And so they're so quite good at just sort of roll with it themselves. Some people, they know what they saw, but they can't. It still does not compute. Of
course.
They don't understand sort of how, from here to there, basically, what's the sort of in-between story or the in-between explanation. And because of that, it's still a bit difficult to process.
It's oftentimes in our journey of being guides or supports or teachers or mentors or whatever language you want to use, it's recognizing we're oftentimes there to hold space and plant seeds and leave the cultivation of those seeds to their higher self, because it could be the seed you planted with those individuals now won't be ready to germinate until 5 years from now, right? True. And your role in their journey is complete simply by planting that seed or giving them that opportunity. And I think, my greatest success as a healer back when I was doing a lot of hands-on healing back in Australia years ago was understanding it wasn't my job to fix anyone. My role was to be there and be the hollow tube for what was to come through for their highest and best. And at that time, my team said, sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is supporting them through the transition from this life. It's not always about healing their physical body and keeping them here. From a human level, that may not make sense, but from a spiritual path, that oftentimes is really the greatest gift that we can give, is holding that space for them to do that. And so that's really, I think, an important thing, whatever work our listeners might be drawn to do on their spiritual path. So going back just for a moment, you mentioned in our correspondence that your first contact that you recall with a galactic being was when you were 6 years old. How clear is your memory on that? And what would you like to share about that interaction?
Yes, that's a very interesting memory. I was about 6 years old and I was sleeping. And for some weird reason, I woke up in the middle of the night and looked out in the hallway, and the door was sort of half open. There was it wasn't closed and it wasn't complete. It was sort of halfway in between. And the apartment was completely dark. And I just looked sort of out into the hallway, and there was this white being staring back at me, and it had the height of about a 6-year-old child. So for a long time, I thought it was a child ghost who maybe sensed that there was a living child living in that apartment. So I thought it was a child to child, maybe a bit like Casper the Friendly Ghost. I think being 6 years old, that's sort of my way of explaining it to myself. I was like, that's like Casper the Friendly Ghost. So yeah, something like that. Oh, okay. But the being did look a bit odd because it was humanoid and it was very, very white, solid white, but its eyes was a big round blackish and tiny nose and a little slit as a mouth. And it wasn't until years later, many years later, in a channeling and meditation, I suddenly realized it was my ET guide. And that meeting that night, he had accidentally woke me up and I was not supposed to see him. So the reason he was sort of staring at me, because he was just as surprised as I was. Yeah.
And did you have more interaction with him then as time went on?
Well, yeah, I think sort of on a telepathic plane, because I've always been sort of in conversation with my spirit guides or on a daily life, but not really sure who I was talking to, just that feel that I got an answer. I did sense there was something living in my dad's wardrobe. There was something about that wardrobe. I could not go near it. And that's how sensitive children are, right?
Yeah.
And as I got older and got better at sort of remote viewing, I sort of looked back in time and yep, there was a little dark entity living in his wardrobe. So I was absolutely spot on back then.
You mentioned that you're pretty much tuned in from birth. Was anyone else in your family intuitive that you know of?
Well, it is a Christian country, as Protestant, Nordic. But in Denmark, people are not really religious. I think there's like this new wave of spirituality going on these years. But back then in the 80s and 90s, no, not really. Not really.
No.
So I've been perceived as just cuckoo.
Yeah, I was wondering if you shared it with your family that you'd seen these beings. I know that you said that your spirit guides appeared as souls that passed over. At what age do you think you stopped sharing what you were seeing and hearing and receiving with your parents or your family?
I think it was right after the thing with the being when I was 6 years old. Then. So I mentioned like a few things, the thing with the wardrobe. And also there was a teddy. I was sitting in my room playing and there was a teddy on the shelf and it was sort of leaning up against the wall. So it was quite far from the edge. And I was just sitting playing. Suddenly that teddy just fell down on my head, straight onto my head, as if something had knocked it over. No, I was met with skepticism and a bit of laughter, and then I just kept my mouth shut. And then when I was a teenager, it sort of all burst open again, and then it came a lot, seeing lots of ghosts and auras and weird things. And back then, so my energy was quite in low vibration because there had been some problems in my upbringing, and suddenly this like very strong clairvoyant ability just sort of burst open. I started going into self-healing. I thought I need to heal myself both for my own sanity and my life quality. And then also to not attract low vibration beings. And that has definitely worked. That plan did work.
And you were a teenager at this time?
Yeah, I was about 15, 16.
Wow, that's quite astute to do that. So you did the self-healing. I know you the Rosen technique and some others. Were those readily available?
Oh, what year has this been? It's around 2000. I was sort of searching where I came across the Buddhist and the Buddhist people and sort of was there for a while and took some initiations and read some scriptures, but got confirmation that, yeah, those things I see, they really do exist. It wasn't only within the Buddhist realm, it was also like other spiritual books, psychic books. So yeah, just sort of spiritual communities. I also looked at the Hindus, Christian realm. I actually had a meeting with a priest when I was 17. He made me so angry. I came and said, bless him. He did his best. But I rang and established a meeting with him and came to his office at the church and said, so-and-so, I see these things. Can you help me and or explain what this is? And he just shook his head and said, well, according to the Bible, we're not really allowed to engage in that sort of stuff. Just pray to Jesus. He'll be with you. And I was looking at him just thinking, screw you. This is not helping.
There's such a box around those religions. Yeah. Even though if you look back to the early days of every single religion, there is a mystical aspect that predated the modern religion. And yet, because of the power and control and trying to keep people disempowered, as you say, they don't talk about it, or they say it's the devil's work to put fear into people. And most of us either were kicked out of Catholic school or Sunday school or whatever your religion might be because we asked too many questions that they weren't allowed to answer or were afraid to answer. So you had enough insight and knowingness to begin reaching out and to go through your own healing aspect to bring that into balance. At what point did you decide to go to the psychic development school?
In all this search as a teenager, I also discovered the two terms exoteric and esoteric. And I realized that many of the religions, they operate from a very exoteric level, meaning for the listeners, exoteric means the things you can perceive, being like the rituals and churches and temples and stuff like that. The esoteric is the things behind the veil, you can say, like the mystical thing, like if you do a religious ritual, the esoteric part is the energies and the angels in spirit. So that's why. And I realized there is this something called esotericism. So with that newfound knowledge, I sort of slowly started searching that type of knowledge, esoteric knowledge. I ended up in Theosophical Society and Rosicrucian Order. So all up through my 20s, basically. So I basically spent my 20s on sort of reading lots of books and doing some thought field therapy course. And then when I was about 29, there was like a big shift in my life because I had been working as a festival organizer for some years and doing humanitarian work in Sierra Leone, West Africa. And then at some point, I just felt that I was sort of finished with it. It was sort of a finished chapter, big crossroad in my life. Then I felt this longing for diving deep into really sort of training my own abilities, because at this point, I had gathered like a lot of book knowledge and a lot of sort of daily practice, a lot of understanding about what it was. Now I felt ready to also train my psychic muscle. So Googled psychic schools in Copenhagen. There are several of them. I just looked at them and felt, well, I know I'm supposed to say, well, oh, I chose this because I felt drawn to it. But it's actually because it was the easiest with the bus.
Right. Sometimes that's the way it happens in 3D.
It's just one bus I could just direct. So I went there, had a meeting with her, and sort of like a pre-screening meeting. I'm going to go and feel her vibe. And, if it's not right, I'm going to find someone else. But then it was just a perfect match. And her name is Lone Hertz, renowned psychic medium here in Denmark. She's also a crystal healer. So I actually ended up spending 3 years at her psychic school. So that was first doing a psychic education and then a mediumship education. So that was like a new chapter in my life. Amazing.
And how did your gifts, do you feel, develop from before taking the class? Was it more confidence? Was it more opening? What was developed through that schooling?
My ability to tune in on demand into the spirit world, where before it happened more sporadically, but it was more something that happened to me. I practiced to see them with my mind's eye, and I also often see them with open eyes as well. We practiced the 5 expanded senses. You got clairvoyance, which is clear sighting, right? So I'm lining it up for all the listeners out there. Clairvoyance is clear seeing. Then you have clear sensing, sentient. Yeah, that's with the emotion, where you can feel other people's emotion. And I've heard people say, oh, well, that's just empathy. No, it's not empathy, because it's someone standing behind me. Not just I feel someone is there, but I can feel what the person is feeling inside of them.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's how deep it goes. It's not that I just sort of sense that there are something with my sort of magnetic field. I can feel what they're feeling, even though they may be just sort of reading a newspaper or something like that. And then you have clear taste, clear audio, and clear smelling. Yeah. And we did some awesome practices where I remember there was one spirit. I could just smell when men, they shave themselves, the aftershave, Old Spice. Strong smell of Old Spice. And I looked at the client saying, I think your dad used Old Spice. Yes, he did. There's a really strong smell of Old Spice here. Yeah. And taste, obviously, if the person had some sort of preference for food or something. And then the audio is when you can hear them talking. There's the inner ear and outer ear. And besides that, it's like differentiating between the spirit. Is this a guide? What was the purpose of the guide? What is an ET, human, animal? And then also past lives and future lives, which for the record doesn't really exist, because as we know, time doesn't exist. So all lives exist simultaneously. I prefer to call it parallel life. And that's why there can be this bleed over where if someone, they have a headache, like if they have migraine in this life, well, it could be because they had their head bashed in another life, parallel life. And I think it's quite difficult for people to grasp this. There's only one now. Even this lifetime, from birth to death, is only one now. So yeah, it is freaky. My healer abilities also everything just got boosted. Distance healing, yeah, I had some really great examples where I've been on one continent, a client on another continent, and just been doing healing and clairvoyance, contacting their dead relative, healing dead pets. By the way, I have a thing I do. When you see, for example, on Facebook, videos are posted like animals being tortured, that sort of horrible stuff. Right. When I come across a video like that, I always connect to the spirit of that animal that was tortured, and I just sit with it and just heal its spirit, heal its trauma. So I know I couldn't rescue it while it was being tortured, but at least I can heal the energy from the memory so it doesn't bring it into its next life.
That's beautiful. Very loving. And how long ago did you complete that course?
think it was 2015.
Mm-hmm. So while you were in the middle of that course, there was a shift in some of your guides. Do you recall what actually happened or how that transpired?
That was also another wacky experience. I've experienced many weird and strange things. Right. So it was in the beginning of the psychic education, and also because I could differentiate between like 4, 5, 6 different spirit guides, and they were males and females, and they have sort of had certain features, recognition signs, each of them. And then I asked them to line up in front of me next to each other, almost like when you're taking like a school photo. So I said, can you just like, so I can sort of see you standing next to each other, can I see you like that? And as I was sort of distinguishing them, suddenly this picture got photobombed because there was another being who suddenly stepped into this row of people. And that was a tall gray, and he was wearing human clothes. Yes, I was speechless.
And how much interaction have you had with that being? And have there been other galactic beings that have come in?
Oh, plenty.
I mean, I know they come in and out, but as far as your core team, for the lack of a better way to phrase it.
I knew from that moment, okay, something big is coming. He turns out to be, it's a male-ish energy, so I call him. It turns out it was him who was the little spirit. I was years old. Yes, that
he said, I'm back.
He's back. And apparently I did a psychic session with another ET psychic. Yeah, because, it can be a bit difficult to do clairvoyance on oneself, to a certain degree, but only to the degree that I can sort of look within also. Doing clairvoyance on oneself is a bit like a dentist trying to fix his own teeth. Like sort of, he might be the world's greatest dentist, but even he needs someone to look objectively at it, right? So this fella, we found out we sort of got a name. I'm not sure. I think it's a symbolic name, but he calls himself Eloi. Every night when I sleep, he's the ET who comes and brings me back to my spaceship. That one was big to swallow. I said, bring me back to my spaceship. Can I have that one more time? Yeah. It's because it sounds really crazy, but suddenly everything made sense. And that's because when we incarnate, we incarnate from many different planes and areas and planets, and some of us come here again and again and again. But I'm one of those many souls who, so in my past life was an ET and have brought much of this ET consciousness into my human incarnation. So that is why I sort of feel a bit out of place. And I think people always sort of found me a bit different, but in a very pleasant way. And I also feel different, but in a pleasant way. And that differentness is apparently my ETs.
That aspect of you, as we talk parallel lives versus past lives, it's like you're still there while you're here. There's an aspect of you. And in the journeys going to the craft, do you have any visual memory or energetic sense of what the craft was like? And you may not have.
Yes, very much so. All of this opened up. Suddenly when I did meditation and I was connecting with Eloi, and I could ask him stuff, and I would sort of astrally go there with him. I saw shelf beds. I would say dark blue, navy blue, something like that. There's a really dark sort of rubbery plastic thing. It sort of just comes straight out of the wall. And I think I'm not sure if it was myself I saw, or if someone I knew, but it was a hybrid. I think that's the early stage hybrid where they're more ET than human, that the humanness is only sort of a few percentages. Right. I think that's the early stage. Or is it the latter stage? I think it's the early stage. Yeah. I've seen beings. It is very true. There are these sort of, I don't like the word reptilian because I think it has sort of almost like a modern day word for everything dark and negative. I think it looked more like a dinosaur. It looked more like Denver the dinosaur. But yeah.
And was it more benevolent?
It was benevolent. It was very positive. That's the thing, right? There's many of these reptilians who are actually just really benevolent and not these sort of evil crocodile beings. Like there's many versions of them. Like there are many versions of humans.
And that's that moving into that sense of discernment, being able to see past any imposter energy, because sometimes they'll come in with the facade of being benevolent and not. And it's also about raising your frequency so you're not in fear. When I was in my early 20s, I was very in constant contact with a dragon guide. And this being was very adamant that he was dragonian, not draconian.
Nope.
And the difference between that draconian energy, which can be a little more manipulative than the dragon energy, and there are many beings of different appearances, so it's that trusting your inner discernment and keeping your frequency high, because as we keep our frequency high, they can't come into that. And so there's many initiations that way. And so between 2013, when the shift began to happen, this being kind of presented himself again to you, and you were becoming a little more initiated, if we should say, consciously in that aspect, in addition to what you'd been doing with your mediumship with those that had crossed over. It came to kind of perhaps a peak, or at least an interesting aspect, in 2015 when you had your actual first physical craft sighting.
It was in Vietnam.
Oh, wow. When you were there on your humanitarian work?
Yes. I was teaching. So it's a part of me studying nutrition. And so the humanitarian part is teaching nutrition in a developing country. I had been, for the past 2 years at that point, I had been sort of digging deep, UFO videos and groups and watching lectures from all over the world. And so quite vibing a lot with the whole UFO thing. And we were at a birthday party. We met some other Danes and they had a birthday party, and it was up in a skyscraper on 21st floor. And we were standing in the balcony, and I look out, and there's the moon, it's the full moon. And then next to it, there's this massive white sphere that looks like it was made of plasma. So it had a texture. It was not completely solid, but it definitely had a texture. And then I just said to the other people, "Oh my God, look, there's a UFO." And they thought I was an idiot, so they went inside. Now I was standing alone at the balcony, just staring at this thing, thinking, what is that? So looking down, seeing if there was some laser show. There was no laser show. So trying to find a known source for it. But it was just hanging there, completely still and just hanging in midair. It was massive. And then suddenly it evaporated the way smoke evaporates. And it didn't lose its spherical shape. It was like a sphere of plasma turning into a sphere of smoke and then evaporating. And then I knew this is, because I have read that is how interdimensional UFOs, that is how they can behave. So that was my proof. I knew now I'd seen a UFO, and I have, one thing is that, okay, my psychic mind, and I so had these visions and astral traveling, that's all fine. But now I had a physical 3D experience. And now I was adamant. I'm like, I am not letting this go. Now I know. I went from believing to knowing.
Mm-hmm. So what progressed from there? Did you start seeking out others? Is that where you got involved with CE-5 work? What actually transpired from that sighting in the sky?
At the point, I wanted to go deep into the UFO community, both in Denmark and internationally, but my education took up so much time, so I just put it a bit on standby until I think.
Well, that's how the human navigation of our life is. We have to weave all aspects. And so at what point did it come back into being something you were more actively participating in?
That was in 2017. So I finished the nutritionist degree. I thought, okay, I am out of here. And then first I flew to Arizona and attended the International UFO Conference. And then, that was amazing.
We were there. Joseph and I were there. Oh. We were at a booth. We were at the SETI booth in 2017.
My God.
Yeah. So go ahead. So you attended that conference.
That's amazing. And then 3 months later, I flew back to the States and attended Contact in the Desert. Yeah, so that was also brilliant, amazing, wonderful community. And I felt if I could just spend my life just going from UFO conference to UFO conference. Stephen Greer, he did like a one evening with CE-5 Contact introduction and so teaching. So I was there, and it was like a 4 or 5 hour thing, like an evening thing. And he showed us a lot of interesting equipment and sky watching, and it was really good. And so that was, when was that? It was in May 17. Then come back to Copenhagen to make a UFO group. And after seeing the one in 15, I thought I need to do something seriously about it. Stephen Greer and his contact protocol. In spring 2018, we sat down and said, okay, we're going to make some articles of association. We're going to do this and that. We're going to make a web page and we're going to build it up from scratch. So that's what we did. Got it registered with the officials, and it's up and running. So it's once a month where we do this skywatch and do Stephen Greer's protocol.
What would you like to share about some of the contact experiences your group has had since you began, both the physical as well as the intuitive or the multidimensional sensory connections?
We've seen them. There was one evening where we saw like a bunch of them on the sky just moving about. They look like they're bigger than stars, and they sort of scoot over the sky. They sort of move really fast. And then there was the night with there was the blood moon last year, and we also saw them move about. There was another evening where there was one short, because there was nothing going on at the sky, and it was still sort of dusk, like the sun had not set in fully. And then suddenly there was this metal ball hanging silently mid-air, and it was sort of rotating on itself, like top and bottom, and it was just hanging there. It wasn't moving at all. It was just because we see between the trees, like the distance, we could see it wasn't moving, and we stared at it. I tried to take a photo with my little mobile camera. This didn't really work out anything. I'm still, it's sort of on my wish list. Get some proper camera equipment for CE-5, also like thermal camera and stuff like that. Right. Yeah, and then so there was this cloud that came by and sort of covered it, and when the cloud was gone, the thing was gone.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Now, with your intuitive ability, when you tune into what you see, do you at times get communication or a sense of the beings that are there, or how would you like to describe that to the listeners?
Yes, very much so. So in a sort of clairvoyant medium way, in a psychic medium way, I sort of see them in my mind. The protocol is sort of connect with them mentally. I do it very, very consciously, psychically. Align my frequency with theirs, which is love and compassion, peace. Anybody can tap into it. And invite them and do vectoring, where you are out in the meditation, you go out in space, and then you sort of slowly zoom into the planet, the area, the region, the country, and then where you are specifically located. Right. So do a vectoring, and everybody can do this. And I can just feel the connection as if it's very tangible for me. It's very uplifting energy. It's a bit ecstatic. One evening, that was after the blood moon night. So I came home and went to bed, and I had a Kundalini rising. So just feel my Kundalini energy just blasting through me. It was amazing. Okay. I loved it. Yeah. So I've been working. Side note, been working with my Kundalini energy for 15 years, and did a training in how to transmit.
We're going to talk about that after the show. Give more detail, because I know that listeners will be interested in hearing about that transmission, that Shaktipat. So I know that you also, as part of, if I understand correctly, as part of your CE-5, you do follow the protocol, and you also do meditation, and you support those that gather with you to tune into experiencing the energies. How would you describe that to listeners who perhaps are interested in opening up to contact, who may not yet have seen anything in the sky? What suggestions would you share with them?
I would suggest the listeners to, first of all, ask yourself if you want to see them, and ask yourself if you want to meet them. Because these are beings that is individuals. Do you really, in your heart, wish to meet them? And if you feel any resistance, then work on that resistance. In my own example, I've definitely had nights where I was so wishing, oh, please show up, I would love to see lights on. And Eloi, the gray, he came smashing through my wall in ghost form. I screamed,
jumped up.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. I flew out of bed like a scared cat. Oh my God. And then I told him, okay, fine, thank you for coming. Please go away.
Right.
So yeah, it's like a threshold we all need to pass because we really, really want it. We really want to see it, but we're still a bit afraid of it.
Right.
And if we actually do see it, we get shit scared. Yeah, so it's sort of a gradual adaptation. And that's why it's good that the ETs, they start with showing up in your mind's eye, in meditation, and sort of deal with them there to know their energy and so get to know how they look, because they do look different. But most of them look quite different. So yeah, get to know their vibration, and then so step by step, then you can so ask for them to show more of themselves. And they're always willing to show themselves for you. They are thrilled when people are ready to meet them because they long for connecting with us.
Guidance or messages in your own personal encounters have you received from the star beings that really kind of made a big difference for you?
That was out of the ordinary. So yeah, I mean, there's like the usual stuff, like the daily stuff, life decisions and what to do. And if I'm writing an exam report, like please clear guidance and a working brain so I can write a good report. That's sort of the day-to-day stuff. Spirit guide, lovely help. The things they have showed me where I was really blown away, even as a psychic, has been the times where I've astrally have gone to the spaceship.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I felt, okay, this is much bigger and much more complex than just talking to dead people. Like suddenly speaking to ghosts seems like at beginner's level. It suddenly felt like that. Whereas communicating with ghosts had always been like, oh, this big sort of amazing thing that I was very intrigued. Suddenly that seemed like minuscule compared to this vast complexity of biodiversity and beings on other planets and our own place in that, and other universes as well, to make it even more complicated. It's like, this is a never-ending story, and it just makes me more curious and intrigued, and I don't want it to end. I want to know more.
And so for others who may not be in an area, or if they're interested in starting their own group for skywatching or contact, what recommendations would you make for those individuals?
Absolutely. Two recommendations. One is log on to SiriusDisclosure.com, which is Stephen Greer's own webpage, and you can follow the guidelines there. You're also on ce5cph.dk. Just make sure it comes from a loving heart and a genuine wish to connect in a peaceful, loving way with these beings. Do not do it for entertainment. Then they won't come either anyway, so you might as well forget it. But let it come from a pure space and personal space, because you want to meet them. And not make any fuss about it, because their existence is just as natural as our own. The only people who is not aware of what's going on, that's us.
Yeah, as I say, these beings like Bakal, the lion being from Sirius, and Leah from Andromeda that I connect with, they don't want to be put up on a pedestal. They don't want to be exalted or looked down to. They really just are here to support and to share and to assist. And I think you and I share that intention to hold the higher frequency. And one of the things that you shared was important to me, that from your perspective, it is more of that consciousness raising aspect of contact that's important to you versus the conspiracy and the government suppression. Do you want to spend a little bit of time in sharing how you came to that understanding that that's how it's resonated for you?
Yeah. So the thing about sort of government cover-up and conspiracy theories and all this, which I call the mindfuck, basically. I know there's a lot of cover-up going on, and that's been going on for centuries, millennials. There's nothing new about it. But I don't want CE-5 Copenhagen to engage in this sort of reflections, because CE-5 Copenhagen, the values in it is about the personal direct contact and experience with UFOs and ETs.
Mm-hmm.
And as I normally say, when you see it with your own eyes, there's no more need to ponder, or like the mind fog stops.
Exactly.
There. And also think it's fodder for paranoia.
Right.
Suddenly people they can't go to the supermarket because they think CIA is tracking them with the supermarket's cameras. It can really go over the top.
Well, and I think also that for me personally, it keeps it in the mental body. It keeps it in a lower frequency versus if truly ascension or awakening or remembering, however you want to language it, is what your intention is, then it's not about putting your head in the sand and ignoring it, but it's about where do I want my energy to resonate with?
Yeah.
And do I want it to resonate down here at that mental, or do I wish to...
Yeah, it's very tricky.
Do I wish to raise into the higher vibration, which for me is where the galactic brothers and sisters that I choose to interact with like to dance a little bit more.
Exactly. Yeah, that's actually a really good way of saying so. Look up, because if people if they want to see ETs and UFOs, then look up. Don't look side to side where other people are sort of confused about what's going on. But on a side note, I have to say I have respect for the people who combing through government documents to find anomalies, and like all of we need that, because there's a lot of UFO knowledge that is not being published and sort of out there for the broader civilian people. So shout out, big up, and big respect to all you guys who does those kind of things. It's just
absolutely there's a place for everyone.
Yeah, it's just that in CE-5 Copenhagen, that's not that area of ufology that we work on. But when I do Stephen Greer's protocol, I usually call it Meditation 1 and Meditation 2. Meditation 2 is Greer's protocol. Meditation 1 is my home brew of preparing the group for Greer's protocol. And that practice is about it's some mantra, it's
aromatherapy.
Rosemary. I just asked my spirit guide. That's why I turned.
Sorry.
It's rosemary, and some incense, and then I do some chakra boost, people's energy bodies. And I was thinking, as part of what I call meditation 1, I could add these loving songs. I need to figure out if I can get the lyrics or something like that, because the ETs really like those frequencies.
Absolutely.
So that's what came out of that night. There wasn't much going on in the sky. Well, at least what we could see, because of the clouds. There's always love.
Yeah, it's just what we can see because of the weather that comes in. So thank you so much for your time and your sharing. We're about to coming to the end of the time for the BBS radio show. We're going to start after the show. So we'll have more digging deep into your healing and things. But is there anything else that you wanted to say in conclusion? And also if you want to mention your websites and Facebook page again?
I want to say thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to tell a broader audience about what we do here in CE-5 Copenhagen. And again, you can always find out more about it on ce5cph.dk. And for me myself, psychic medium, healer, and Shaktipat transmissioner, my name is Linda Løwebeck. I live in Copenhagen, or København, as we say in Danish. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much. I have a feeling that this goes out in broader and deeper than what I can imagine right now. But I have a feeling it comes at the right time. And Ashli, I want to say thank you for your time and your dedication for facilitating this radio show. Thank you so much.
It's an honor, Linda, and thank you and our teams multidimensionally that kind of found us connecting on Facebook, and thank you for all that you do in holding that space for others to remember all that they are. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. It's another great show here at Threshold to Ascension Radio. Have a glorious week, and please keep shining your light. Mahalo and good night.